Buongiorno. That's good day in Italian. And it seems only appropriate that I use the little Italian I have as we embark on our journey to Renaissance Italy. This unit will take us to Italy and beyond. We'll be going throughout Europe over the next 3 or 4 weeks. The painting that you see on this first page is called The School of Athens, and it was created by Raphael, a famous Renaissance painter. Two questions will guide us throughout this unit. What is a Renaissance man? Are there Renaissance men and women today? The drawing on this page is a piece of art that was created by Leonardo da Vinci. It's called The Vitruvian Man. As the Middle Ages came to an end, a new age, what we call the Renaissance, began in the rich city-states of northern Italy. During the Renaissance, which was about AD 1350 to 1600, there were almost 250 different city-states on the Italian peninsula, but the two most powerful ones were Florence and Venice. And they'd become rich by controlling the trade between Asia and Europe. So here is Florence, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time at the beginning of our study in Florence. And here is Venice. So what led to this rebirth, to this Renaissance? Well, I'd like to talk with you about four different events that led to the rebirth in Europe that we call the Renaissance. First of all, let's look at gunpowder. This was a substance that was introduced to Europe from China, and it changed warfare substantially. If you think about it, think about the Middle Ages. You've got a knight on horseback with a lance, and now all of a sudden you've got soldier with a gun, and you can see that war is going to be fought differently. Secondly, people could no longer rely on the nobility for protection as they had during the Middle Ages. You remember the castles and knights and earls and dukes and the peasants that flocked for protection to the castles. Well, the power of these kind of local leaders was diminishing, and at the same time, kings with central authority were becoming the big cheese, in Europe. They were the big, important, powerful leaders. Third, there was a loss of respect for church leadership. Again, if you recall, during the Middle Ages, there were many church scandals. Some priests, didn't keep their vows. Church leaders fought over who would be pope, and too often church offices were sold to the highest bidder. And these kinds of actions led people to question what the church had to say. I mean, was it really the final authority? Did people have to accept something that the church said is true just because the church said it? The painting on this page is of Pope Alexander VI, and he was a Borgia pope and was famous, we might even use the word infamous, for his corrupt papacy. Truly horrible, horrible man. And fourthly, a fourth factor that led to the rebirth of the Renaissance was that some people began to become interested in the ancient Greeks and Romans. They wanted to know what these ancient people thought and believed, what kind of art they created, and what their views were on politics and government. Wealthy patrons were an important factor in the Renaissance, and the Medici family in particular was one of the most celebrated of these wealthy patrons. The Medici made their money in banking, and over time they established bank branches not only on the Italian peninsula but throughout Europe. If you think about it, that's quite amazing. They made just a tremendous amount of money. And they used this money to support art, particularly Lorenzo de' Medici, who is pictured here, He lived from 1449 to 1492, so that gives you a little, 1492 date gives you a little kind of reference in terms of what time we're talking about. He's known in history as Lorenzo the Magnificent for his support of artists, including Botticelli and Michelangelo. As I mentioned earlier, during the Renaissance, some people became interested in the art and ideas of the ancient world. So they wanted to know more about people like Plato and Cicero. Now, the sculpture on the left is of Plato, who is a very famous ancient Greek philosopher. And the bust on the right is of Cicero, who is a celebrated thinker and writer of ancient Rome. Cicero is known for his, amazing orations. He was one of the most gifted speakers of all time, but he was also an incredibly prolific letter writer. And that brings us to Petrarch or Petrarch. There's some disagreement as to how to pronounce it. But there's general consensus that this man, who I call Petrarch, is the father of the Renaissance. It was really his rediscovery of Cicero's letters that's credited with initiating the Renaissance. Now, this is a drawing of Petrarch, and it seems to support the old adage that you can't judge a book by its cover. He looks like such a humble and modest man. It's hard for me to see him as the father of this tremendous age that saw energy and this explosion of ideas. But it is what it is. You might not recognize these faces, maybe you do, but I know that you will have seen or heard of the art they produced during the Renaissance. On the left is Leonardo da Vinci. In the center is Michelangelo. Below him is Raphael. And to the right is Botticelli. Now, you'll learn more about these artists and many other figures who lived during the Renaissance as we continue in this unit. One of the things that you'll come to understand, I think, is that Renaissance artists and scholars began to focus more on human beings. Now, they were still interested in religious themes and religious ideas, but increasingly they wanted to examine and depict human feelings and human experiences, the human form, and even human interests and achievements. So collectively we refer to this interest as humanism. Now, on this page, you can see some of this reflected. The Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, you recognize, I'm sure. The Pietà is a famous sculpture by Michelangelo. This is a part of Botticelli's Primavera, and this is on the far right is a detail from one of Raphael's paintings that's called The Miraculous Draught of Fishes. While Renaissance art and writing reflected many of the same religious themes as the Middle Ages, what you will begin to see is that during the Renaissance, people became much more interested in secular or worldly interests as well. So what is a secular interest? What do we mean by secular? Well, basically, it doesn't have anything to do with religion. It has to do with the world. So this idea that they would look at the world around them, that they would look at human beings, their total focus would not be on religion anymore. It would be on their own world, keeping with that whole notion of humanism. this new emphasis on, oh, let's go back just for a minute. I want to go back here. Um, I want to talk a little bit about these two individuals. Um, on the left is a painting by Raphael of Baldassare Castiglione. And he's important to us because he was one of the kind of biggest and most celebrated writers of the Renaissance. His major book was called The Book of the Courtier, and it was a bestseller. Basically, it was a guide to Renaissance men or young men during society, teaching them how to become Renaissance gentlemen. Now, on the right is a book plate from a book written by Niccolo Machiavelli, and his book is called The Prince. This is an important political treatise. It's so important that it's still read in colleges and universities. It's still read, widely. I don't know how widely. It's still read today. Um, and it's had a tremendous impact on political thought in modern society. So in this unit, we're going to have a chance to read some excerpts from both of these books. Okay, now let's go on. The new emphasis on humanism and secular interests had a profound effect on European society. And these new ideas really helped to usher in major cultural, religious, and scientific changes throughout Europe. But the changes, didn't stop there because ultimately they affected and involved the entire world. And we're going to learn more, read more, think more about this as we jump into this topic. I think you're going to love it. I can't wait for you to visit Italy with me. So for now, I'm going to say ciao. That's C-I-A-O. And that's the Italian word for goodbye or hello. But in this case, I guess it works both ways. See you soon.